everybody, it's Heather Cox, your roving reporter. I am here at McClarin High School with a wonderful Vanguard friend of ours. I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Farhat Ahmad at McClarin High School. I teach English.
All right, and Farhat joined us last year to the Vanguard team, and we are thrilled to have him because he's doing some amazing work with individualized learning, personalized learning, and we're here today to both hear from him and some of his students about some of the things that are taking place. Now, go ahead and tell us, when you've got your students, how you get started with the whole individualized learning plan.
Everything starts with a SRI score. That's a score that determines their reading level, and depending on how they score on that, we place them into one of three groups: a high, middle, or low group. And then depending on that group, they get assigned to class, and then they take a diagnostic for their class, and then depending on that diagnostic, that determines their coursework or whether or not they're going to be skipped ahead or held behind for further remediation, whatever the need is.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really important about the way that you use data in your class and assessment data specifically is assessments have become a bit overused at times, and that's because the data is not being used to make really informed decisions. When you guys get data, when you get that SRI data, or then you get these diagnostics, how important is that for determining the path that the student's going to take?
There is no path without the data. Like, that's actually a big pet peeve of mine, is collecting data just to collect data and then using data the way it's effective. Everything in the class is driven specifically from the data. So honestly, like, the traditional expectations are sometimes not even by domain. They just want your test scores, pass, fail, or domain categories. For data to be effective in my class, it has to be specific to the standard. Mm-hmm. And there's diagnostic tests, and we use this program, USA Test Prep, which will give you diagnostic data by the standard. And then from there, I can assign coursework.
And I think that's a perfect transition, because you said standards, and that's a key in your class, using the standards and then going from there. So let's say a student takes a diagnostic assessment and, on one of the standards blows it out of the water. And then maybe, 2 or 3 other standards, there's room for improvement. What happens for that student at that point?
They're assigned remediation based on the standards they didn't perform so well in. And then once they can pass the second diagnostic on just those standards, not a generic diagnostic, but a diagnostic tailored specifically to the 3 standards they were deficient in, then they'll move on to regular course content. And that regular course content will specifically be focused on those standards they showed a need for remediation. And there might be a slight overlap with standards they've already mastered.
Some of them do.
But the majority focus is going to be on X, Y, and Z standard that they were deficient in.
And what I love about that is that it's good for students that span the entire spectrum of, skills and abilities. Those students that are succeeding are not continually redoing things that they already know. And those students that are struggling but have some areas of success don't have to keep doing the things where they've already seen the success and not get to focus on that. Another key in your classroom that I know you're very strong about meeting with your students. How regularly do you try to meet with your students?
I try to meet with them as much as possible every single day. Even our closing activities, make sure you've scheduled FaceTime with the teacher. Mm-hmm. None of this works without daily FaceTime, and it seems the students who meet with me more are the ones who have that self-interest, who want to keep pushing themselves further and further and take advantage of the system. There's this type of environment is really beneficial to that top 5% and that bottom 5%, mm-hmm. which are a lot of the students you find in an alternative setting. The top 5%, they can go far quickly in a short amount of time, and they can do advanced level work, they can skip ahead to other classes, whatever. The low 5%, doesn't have to sit there and sweat having to read an 11th grade text when they read at a second grade level. They can just focus on doing basic reading remediation until they get to that point where they can read the 11th grade text.
So it's really meeting the students where they are and helping them work their way up from there.
I mean, it has to be that way in this building because with our particular population, like, everyone talks about learning gaps, but McClarin is like that end result of learning gaps not being addressed, for lack of a better way to say it. And every student in here is completely different. They're across the board in skill levels, across the board in what classes they need or what they need remediated. And they're just, when I first started here, there was no effective way to teach to a group. So personalized learning for me didn't come from any particular initiative. It was more like, I don't know what to do.
Much more organic in its creation, but it really fits the fact, it fits the need to meet so many different groups, because at times you can have up to 6 different classes, 7 different classes within one class period, and that can be a lot. If you don't have you don't have a great way to manage that, which you do, thankfully. If you don't have a great way to manage that, that can be a lot, and then students start missing out. And I love that you said it doesn't work if they don't get the face-to-face time, because I think sometimes there's a misconception that as we bring devices in, we're minimizing face-to-face time, and that connection that students have with the teacher is no longer there. But you're actually saying that it helps that situation.
It's the opposite, actually. Like, I sit there daily and go over the standards with the students, and at first I was skeptical. I'm like, no one cares about standards. And like, no one wants to hear what X, Y, and Z means, but like, everyone's pretty captive. And, there's a lot of positive to it, because say like student has a 67% on one domain, that domain is 5 standards. They could have 100% on 2 of those standards and then be lower on others. So when you look at those scores, that's what I try and focus on, instead of saying, oh, you got 30% on this or 30% on that. It's, oh, hey, look, you got a 100% on this, you killed this, you killed that, and now you only have to do these couple little things to be perfect.
And it just, I would imagine that helps with almost the self-esteem within the classroom as well.
I mean,
to feel like that they're, hey, I actually do know things, and there are just pieces that I have to work on.
There's a lot of defeat at McClarin. Like, students come in here having not found success in their regular placements, and so they already come in here skeptical or used to being marginalized or not having any particular need met or struggling. Like, I'm not sure what their expectations are, but I don't think they're positive. So when like we're sitting there and I'm telling the student, no, you scored 100% on this standard, and on this standard, it's almost disbelief. They're like, they thank me, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't do anything. I'm like, this is your test score. I didn't, didn't help you at all. It like I'm a firm believer in classroom management comes from content and not actual classroom management, like cracking the whip or being a totalitarian.
If they're engaged in what they're learning, then it manages itself ultimately. And I think that you said something that it'll transition us into a good point with talking about success. I would love for you to share the success that you have seen in test scores since before you started, with really hitting it hard with this personalized learning path or perspective, to where your students, the gains that you've seen. Go ahead and share that. Brag on yourself for a second, please.
I think last year we were at a flat 0 passing rate with American Lit, and then just this very first semester with our test scores, we had this doesn't sound in perspective,
I told you to brag. Get it out
it's
there.
a 33. We have like a 33% passing rate, but we also had like one student who was proficient with an 84, and I think he was the highest scoring student in the American Lit in our school. I don't know. It's been a long time.
Hey,
since we've
success
gone.
is
Yeah.
success, and that's fantastic to hear.
Well, and we're like, and then in ninth lit last year, I taught ninth lit too, and those test scores were a similar rate of success. I think the previous passing rate was like 22%, and now with the individualized learning, the passing rate was like 56 to 40. It was a double. It was the difference in
50% gain in the
yeah,
score.
and it's only like one semester. Like the sum total of last year was extremely low for American Lit, and now this is just the first round of tests, and we've already, whatever, I guess, tripled the success rate, and the program is just getting tighter. Like it's almost like Dr. Woodley and Dr. Daniels, my administrators, are great. It's like the classroom's a laboratory, and they know that everything's in a process of change. So,
It should be.
Yeah.
You're like you mentioned when we spoke off camera earlier, you're constantly iterating, you're constantly changing and improving. And I think that that's a great way to approach
well,
things.
that's how like that's how Vanguard actually came in for me, because I wasn't a tech person, but you can't manage 6 classes on paper.
No.
Yeah,
You need a couple of extra hands in order to pick that up.
No, I tried with like 3 classes, and it wasn't working.
Well, good. I'm glad that
Yeah.
Vanguard has been able to do that. Well, McClarin is lucky to have you. I'm so happy that Vanguard has you, so that we can continue to learn from you, and then we'll hear from some of your students and the great things that they have to say about your class as well.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, everybody. We are here with one of Mr. Ahmad's students. I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
I'm one of Mr. Ahmad's students. My name is Johnny House, and this is my first quarter here.
For first quarter here at McClarin. Okay. So tell me about the way that Mr. Ahmad's class is structured. I know he does things a little differently than some of the other teachers probably. So when you come into his class each day, what is it that you get started doing?
Well, firstly, I have my device with me, so I'll sign in and I'll continue the work that I was working on the day before. But if I already finished, I'll meet with him personally so we can continue on and he see how I did and what I need to do next.
How do you know what work you have to start working on?
Well, for starting off, he starts us off with a diagnostic test, and that tells him exactly what we need to work on and what we need to do in USA Test Prep before he starts the classwork in Google Classroom.
Okay, so you take a diagnostic, you then know what you have to work on. Do you then work only on the things that you need to know, or do you work on everything?
Well, we focus on what we need to know, but he also makes sure like we knows like the stuff that we already know, so he like knows exactly what we are.
Okay, so you might do a little bit of reviewing, but you focus really on what you need to know. And I bet that saves a lot of time, doesn't it?
It does.
You don't have to review all the things that you already know and go over it constantly.
Yes.
And you said that you meet with him. How often do you meet with Mr. Ahmad?
At least once or twice a day, depending on how fast I complete my work.
Okay, so you work and you meet with him, and so then you kind of touch base about your progress then.
Yes.
How do you feel like your learning has changed when maybe you first started his class to where you are now?
Like the way it's changed is it's like I'm able to like move at my own speed and learn it at my like own difficulties, and he'll increase it or lower it depending on how I'm doing on it.
That's fantastic. Do you have a lot of other classes that are set up that way?
No.
If you could choose, would you choose to do it this way or kind of the traditional way?
I'll choose to do it this way.
You would choose to do it this way.
Yes.
And so the Surface, then, you take that to all your classes?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Well, that's it for today, and we'll talk to some other students. Hi, everybody. I have another one of Mr. Ahmad's students with us today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Corday.
Corday is here with us. And Corday, tell us a little bit about Mr. Ahmad's class. What class do you have with him?
I have multi-lit, and it's very simple. It's like very independent, and I like working. I like being in Mr. Ahmad's class because he is helpful, and I can just get work done like very quick in his class.
I like the things that you said. You said simple, independent, you're able to get work done quickly. What do you mean by you're able to get work done quickly?
Like if I have to take a test, I'm not really good at test taking. So if I have to, like Ahmad, he makes me test out of his class sometimes, and I'm not really good at test taking. So he just lets me do the class, and I'm able to get the class done a lot faster than the test.
Okay, so do you personally, do you have the exact same work that your other classmates have?
I mean, some of us have the same work because some of us are in the same class, but it's like we're all in one class, but everybody's in a different class, like 11th Lit, multi, world.
So there are multiple levels, multiple classes within that one class period. And then you guys all work on your surfaces, correct? Or your devices,
Yes.
okay? And then is all the content that you need there?
Yeah, everything. And the Surface, we just got the Surface Pros, and I like the Surface. It's very easy to work with.
It's easy to work with.
It's better than just like iPads and doing one thing at a time. I can do multiple things at a time.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and I have my own personal laptop, so I work with like 3 classes at one time. So if I'm in my physical science class, then I'm doing physical science, Mr. Moss work, and my economics at the same time.
So you get a lot of stuff done.
Yeah.
And so when you come to Mr. Ahmad's class, we've heard that you take a diagnostic test to kind of figure out where you are. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's like it places us in our class, and depending on like how good we do, we don't have much work to do in our class. Like my USA test prep diagnostic. Well, if I do very, very well on that, my class won't be as large.
So it gives you kind of an incentive to do well and to work hard, because then you don't have as much work
Okay.
if you do well. That's great. So you're not also redoing work that you already know.
Yeah.
It saves you a lot of time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How is Mr. Ahmad's class different than some other classes you've been in?
Like say like a math class.
Sure, whatever.
Our math classes are like one-on-one with the teachers, and it's like chaotic because the teachers can't be at one place at the same place with everybody at the same time. But with Ahmad, he works with multiple kids at one time.
So he manages that really well.
Yeah.
And do you get to meet with him pretty regularly to kind of touch base about your progress? How often do you guys tend to meet?
Just say like if I get like three journals done, I'll ask him to check, and then I'll keep going and work down.
So you could do a little work, touch base, do some more work. That's
And
fantastic.
I ask him to check my work before I turn it in.
So you know before,
Yeah.
so you can kind of avoid some rough grades if he
Yeah.
if he checks it first.
I
And
have always passed Ahmad's class. I took him last year. I passed him with a 88 last year, and last quarter I passed him with a 95.
well, look at you, good stuff. That is awesome. I bet he's very proud of that as well. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about Mr. Ahmad and his class.
You're welcome.